living in Sarasota, walking on the beach. I was 60 years old, most depressed I've ever been in my friggin' life. I said, I got to go back to work. So I came up with this another idea that my great grandfather had a very successful distillery. At one time, there were 200 distilleries. He was about the fourth or fifth largest during that era. So if I could get the name back and the federal ID number, which is 50, then my youngest son and I would start a distillery. So here we are.
Welcome to our ACG members, and also back this month, we're welcoming our friends at FEI again as well. Matt, I'll kick things over to you for some FEI introductions.
Okay, thank you, Matt. This is Matt Montero, president of FEI Louisville chapter. Welcome, everybody. Glad you're here with us and networking during this difficult COVID time to network. So I wanted to thank our gold sponsors. We're able to keep our membership rates very low and also eliminate local dues entirely. And we have several silver sponsors, and I wanted to point out two brand new ones: KPP, Kentucky Planning Partners, and also Wyatt Tarrant and Combs. This is something special we have for FEI. Again, National came up with this 6 months at no cost. So you can try out FEI, get all the benefits of membership. And if you want to become a member at the end of that 6 months, you can join us at either $2.99 or $3.99. You get to try it all out for 6 months, risk-free. Mark?
Thanks a lot, Matt. We are very excited that we have really a great event lined up for February the 23rd, noon. It's a Tuesday. And we have actually the CFO and the treasurer of Steelcase up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, that are going to do the presentation. What's going to look like when we go back, and us as financial people, we really need to understand that.
Just a real quick introduction to those who are joining us from Kentucky Peerless today. Once again, really excited to have them here. We've got a great team to walk us through. We've got Corky Taylor as the founder who revived the brand, so happy to have him here. Cordell Lawrence, who's Director of Global Marketing and Strategy, and he'll speak a little bit to the rapid growth they've had. And then we've got John Wadle, who's the single barrel curator, who'll be walking us through our tasting today. So Corky, I'll turn things over to you and the team.
All right, Matt. Thank you very much. I certainly appreciate the opportunity. It's an honor to be up here and speak to you. I think talking to Cordell, he wanted me to give you a little bit of my past history before I got into the distilling business. I grew up an Army brat in Hawaii. It wasn't all bad. I was surfing, having a good time. For those of you who've ever seen the movie Patton, the man that was General Patton's chief aide in real life was my father. So we have a lot of history in the military, and people like to hear the story about my father. But grew up in Hawaii. We moved back to his hometown of Henderson, Kentucky, 2 hours west of here. I played golf in college. Then I got into the insurance business, and then in about 1983, 84, I went to work for Jefferies. Some of you might be familiar with Jefferies and Company. I was their marketing manager, traveled all over the United States, pretty much all over the world for Boyd. Then I had this bright idea that I wanted to get in some type of business that would would make money 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I know that sounds a little crazy, but I did it. I got into the pension fund business, and I came up with an idea that I was going to take people out of Social Security in about 32 different states. And we built it up. I started by myself in the Starks building downtown. They said it was an office. I said it was a mop closet. Started by myself and moved the whole company, took my attorney, CPA, assistants. We all moved to Sarasota, Florida, stayed down there, built it up, had about 2,000 employees. We managed overall about 10.1 billion. Sold it to Center Partners, 50th floor, Rockefeller Center up in New York. Living in Sarasota, walking on the beach. I was 60 years old, most depressed I've ever been in my friggin' life. I said, I got to go back to work. So I came up with this another idea that my great grandfather had a very successful distillery. At one time, there were 200 distilleries. He was about the fourth or fifth largest during that era. So if I could get the name back and the federal ID number, which is 50, then my youngest son and I would start a distillery. So here we are. So we've had a lot of fun doing it. I wanted to do some things the way I wanted to do them. I wasn't going to buy a product from somebody, put it in a bottle and say, oh, by the way, this is ours. We make it ourselves. So we had to wait 4.5 years to put it out. We did sell rye whiskey. So we sell rye whiskey and we sell bourbon. We work in about 40 some odd states, some in Canada, Australia, but we're pretty big in the UK. But, you know, the big states, California, Texas, Florida, Kentucky, Illinois, New York are our big states. But we built a good brand. I don't want to take everything away from Cordell. He'd like to tell you about some of the things we've won. The one thing that I'm most proud of, and he'll tell you the rest, is in 2019, we won the #1 craft producer in the world. So, you know, we're a small distillery, but I think we've done things right. This is a different, I always had a financial services background, but when I got into this, it was a learning curve. I don't have any business partners. I don't have any financial partners. I did this on my own, and we've built it to be a pretty good, solid business now, and I think we're putting out a really good product, or hopefully we are. We're proud of it, and I think you'll enjoy it today. Like I said, a lot of you know, are familiar with Jeffries and Company. I actually started as a marketing person. I actually started a mergers and acquisitions business. And I tell people, you know, way back when, I actually took over Pan Am Airlines at 4 o'clock in the morning in the Bahamas one night. So that was two tough days, but we did it. So that's back when it was the gunslinging days of the brokerage business. Traded on the third market, traded stocks 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. So, but anyway, I learned a lot and enjoyed the financial services business. But for those of you who are in it, you know it's getting thinner and thinner and thinner. We started making 5%, 3%, 2%, 75 basis points. I said, time for me to get out. So I got out. Now I'm doing this and happy for it. So I'll turn this over to Cordell. Cordell, you want to give them a little bit of history of our company?
Well, Corky, you're always a tough act to follow. If you ever had the chance to come down here and actually speak and hear from Corky, the man himself here, in the family room here we have on site, take you through the multi-generational history of Peerless, it's pretty phenomenal. You know, this is the resurrection of a pre-prohibition brand founded in 1889 by Corky's great-grandfather, Henry Craver. Was operational up and through about the beginning of Prohibition and was available as medicine during Prohibition. Unfortunately, at the very end, it was not resurrected, and with that, it was dormant for almost 100 years until Corky had the financial wherewithal and patience to see this through and resurrect this once great brand. I'll never forget the first time I met Corky through a mutual family friend, and he told me that story, and he almost acted like the story wasn't impressive enough. And I said, Corky, I've been in the spirits industry my whole career, and I've never heard a story as compelling as yours. And I meant that, and I still mean that.
Well,
so
thank you, Cordell.
I really appreciate that. But we've had one heck of a run of success. You know, Corky's vision from day one has been quality above all else. Money is no object when it comes to making the best product on the market. We really feel like we're doing things differently here. John will touch on a lot of the key points of difference when it comes to how we distill our product. Most recently, as Corky said, named the top craft distillery in the world by Whiskey Magazine, the first time a Kentucky distillery, in fact, has ever won that award. And we started out back in 2017 with our first release being named the top craft rye whiskey in the world at 24 months old, just a 2-year-old product. So the youngest product to ever be on that list and the only rye whiskey to be on that list in 2017 by Whiskey Advocate Magazine. And then Best Kentucky Bourbon by American Whiskey Magazine in 2020. So we've had one heck of a run winning national and international awards every year, but it really comes back to the fact that we're focused on making the best product we can possibly make, never sourcing anything from anybody else. We have full control over everything we do. And in terms of our scaled success and why we're able to kind of grow this rapidly, it was kind of a serendipity at play, I think. We luckily had a friend at Bourbon Review that was also mutual friends with a company called Fetzer Vineyards, which used to be owned by Brown Forman here in Louisville, Kentucky. And Fetzer Vineyards was seeking a high-end, high-quality American whiskey, particularly from Kentucky. And luckily, we were also looking for a distribution and sales partner at that same time. So I call it the Trojan horse strategy, if you will. We were able to tap into their distribution overnight and be in every market available that their product is available as well. So it was a pretty phenomenal run from the beginning, and it's allowed us to scale this brand efficiently and even be available in international markets like Australia, the UK, and Canada. And the other key pillar of our success was really an unconventional approach, and that was courting and building relationships with bourbon and whiskey societies, making sure that the true aficionados and the people that are the most passionate and really move the needle in the business in terms of consumers were fans of our product first. Once they accept our product, we knew that people on the periphery around those groups that follow every move they make, they would accept us and they would accept our product. So really, in a nutshell, that's what we've done, and looking forward to a really healthy dialogue and great questions. And please, this is an open invitation for you to join us here for a tour Monday through Saturday, every week of the year. We're here at your service and here to tell our story.
I've got one more quick story I always like to tell. Growing up in Hawaii, I was surfing, and my dad said, "I'm going to retire from the Army, and we're going to move to Kentucky." I said, "Oh my God, don't send me back there." He said, "Oh yeah," and he said, "By the way, you're going to military school down in Lebanon, Tennessee, at Castle Heights." That's where I went. I said, "Oh God." So he sent me down there, and my two roommates there just happened to be the Allman Brothers, Greg and Dwayne. For those of you who know the Allman Brothers or heard of the Allman Brothers, they were my roommates down there. We probably had too much fun down there, and I think we were asked to leave, but that was okay. We didn't like it anyway. So I'll leave you with that one anyway.
And I think there's some questions coming in the comments there too.
One I think was a recurring idea. Corky, I know you talk about a history in financial services and a financial background. How did some of the specific skills you built in that industry translate to what you were doing and preparing you for the bourbon industry?
Well, I think being president and CEO and starting that company, knowing the expense it is to set up a company and to be positioned all over the United States, I knew there was expense to it. You know, you have to deal with people. I mean, you know, every business to me is a people business. So, you know, I had a relationship with all my regional district, all my people that worked for me. I had 165 employees personally in Florida. And then we had Hank Greenberg, for those of you who know AIG, Hank Greenberg was a partner of mine, and he had a sales force that I used in different parts of the country. So I was plugging in his products. I was doing my own administration in Westchester, Ohio. So we had our own mutual fund platforms. We had fixed accounts. We set all that up. So I understood the financial services business very well. I wanted to find a niche. And I did the same thing, I think, in the alcohol business. I wanted a niche. I wanted to have the best product you could have. So, you know, making our own product, putting it out, being sweet mash, which means for military, you clean everything every day and you start all over. But it all gets down to the same thing. How do you treat people? How do you work with people? Do you look them in the eye? You know, everything's not done over a computer. I mean, I can remember Merrill Lynch had me come to New York one time, 50th floor, where I was looking at Central Park. They told me they were going to let 2,500 people go. And I said, "Really?" He says, "Oh, we're going to do it all on the computer. We don't need any more employees." This was probably 12, 15 years ago, and I'm sure some of you in there remembers this. And I said, "That's the craziest thing I've ever heard." I said, "You still have to have people working with people. People are just not going to do everything on the computer. Maybe some of you do that. But my theory is you got to know people. You have to work with them. You have to understand them. And it's the same way in whatever business you're in. I think that's my theory in business. And when I speak to different groups, I tell them the same thing. It's all about people. You have to have the right people in the right positions. And when you do that, then you're going to be successful. But you got to stick with it. You be focused. When I speak to salespeople and I go in, man, I focus on one thing. When you walk in and you talk to anybody, you better know what you're talking about. And everybody knows what I'm talking about. You get a lot of people that try to sell things just to make money. you've got to understand what you're selling, what you're marketing, and what you're doing in life. And you better understand it very well or better than your competitors. And that's what I focus on. The main thing I focus on is that. Know what you're talking about.
Corky, I know you've been successful in both sides, in reviving a company here and then also in the financial services side. But I'm sure in both instances, you encountered roadblocks along the way, challenges to face. A couple questions came through, one from Abe Mulvihill, one with Lisa, I'll kind of wrap together. One was just what were the early roadblocks in reviving a brand and starting a business? And then more recently, what are some of the challenges you all have had to overcome with COVID and in an environment of the challenges it may create?
Well, there's challenges to every business, but everybody goes through it. You just have to keep focused on what you're doing. When you get into it, you're always going to have expenses that you don't think much about. I think we had that figured out. My youngest son, Carson, was a builder, so he came in and built the facility. It took him 2 years to the day to do it. I had a pretty good idea what it was going to cost. Of course, everything costs more. I understood that. But making products, setting it up, you have to bring people who understand the business. I hired 2 of the best people I thought in the state of Kentucky that had retired from 2 of the biggest distilleries. So I brought them in for a year. I brought Siemens in to help design our own software to run our stills. So we brought the best people in the country we thought could help this place. And I brought the best electricians, best plumbers. So, we didn't cut any corners. I know I could stand up here and tell you about a lot of problems, but looking back, I don't think I saw a lot of problems. Things change. As long as you have your vision and you stay focused on it. And even though I was, fairly successful in the financial services business, the one thing you can't do, you can't get cocky. Every time you get cocky, you get your rear end knocked off. So every day I woke up, I stayed focused just like I do here. Yeah, we're #1 rye, we're #1 bourbon, best distillery in the world, blah, blah, blah. But by God, when I walk through that back door, I want to work as hard as I did the day before, and I don't get cocky about it. And I don't know if that's just the way I feel, and I think I've stuck to that, and that's the way I've done business. I'm soon to be 72 years old, and I'm probably not going to change. So.
Well, I think that attitude's led to success in both, so it seems to be a good one. Tony Thompson has a couple little more technical type of questions. He'd asked if you engaged in contract distilling early on to assist in cash flow, and then also had asked a question about you and Caleb Kilborn meeting and your decision to hire him as master distiller.
Well, we did do some contract distilling to help us. I'd rather do contract distilling than I would buy product from somebody else, put it in a bottle and say, oh, by the way, this is ours. I didn't want to do that. So I did do some contract distilling with some other people. And as far as Caleb came to me, and the 2 fellows that I hired from other distilleries said, I've got this young man, goes to Morehead State University. He's young. He's a sophomore going into his junior year. He's about as sharp as can be. And so I said, well, send him on over. And when I met Caleb, he might have been one of the smartest young men I've ever met. First thing he told me was, he said, Mr. Taylor, I want you to know I've never made a B in my life. I said, Caleb, I want you to know one thing. I've never made a B in my life either, but I'm on the other side of that spectrum. So from then on, we hit it off. We brought, he actually started pulling nails, shoveling gravel. And then the more I talked to him, the smarter he got. And then he started laying out all the electric. He started working with Siemens on the design of how to do it. And finally, we just told Siemens, catch you later. I think we can do it as well, and we have different ideas. So Caleb actually designed the software, laid the distillery out, and he's a very, very smart young man. He started with me 7.5, 8 years ago, so he's been with me for quite a while. And I could just see that he would fit very well with us to be a new distillery.
Okay, it's great to hear it's worked out that way. I'll stay with one more question Tony had asked, and something you talked about earlier on your mash, the use of sweet mash. Tony had asked, about the decision of choosing to use a sweet mash versus a sour mash, and kind of how you came to that decision.
Well, I'll let Cordell answer part of that, but one of the reasons I wanted to have sweet mash is because I wanted to be known for having the cleanest distillery in the country. And I mean, literally, this place, I think, for a 130-year-old building is spotless. And again, it gets back to our military background. But to have sweet mash as opposed to sour mash, we were, I believe, the first or second distillery. There's only a few that do sweet mash. And what that means is you clean everything every day and you start all over. You don't bring your mash forward. You don't use mash that's been used before. And that's what I wanted to do. I thought it would make a better product. We thought it would take a little bit of the bitter taste out of it. And it actually did. So it changed the whole profile. How we pull it off the still. We pull it off the still at 130 proof instead of 160. So we can get better flavor profiles. Then we put it in a barrel at 107 proof. We age it. Then we take it from the barrel at 107 proof and straight to the bottle. So we don't add a drop of water to it once it goes in the barrel. And I think that's the reason why we have the #1 rye in the world and #1 bourbon. So we do things that we don't have to do. You're not going to get the big guys to do what we do. It costs too much money. It's too expensive to clean everything, start all over, and they're too big to do that. So I found my niche, and that's what I've done. I think in my business career, you got to find a niche that works. If the niche works and you can beat your competition, then you got something. So we're never going to be big, but we're going to be real good.
Well, and to build on that, Corky, it's great because you think about all the points of difference that he laid out there, right? A lot of different competitors and products out there might have one or two of those attributes or points of difference. There is not one other product that has the combination of all those points of difference and attributes in one single product. And that was one thing that really allowed us from day one to grab the attention of the distributor, the account, and ultimately the consumer through the 3-tier system. And a real key to our success. And a lot of other competitors have kind of mimicked some of those things that we've done with our product, which is a great honor, honestly.
It is. I think the biggest honor that I've had in this business is I've had two of the granddaddies, if you will, come to me and say, we can't believe what you've done since you started making products 6 years ago. Nobody has ever done that in the history of distilling, of winning the honors. I mean, we just took a 4.5-year-old bourbon and beat 8, 10, 12-year-old bourbons in the state of Kentucky to have #1. People said, how did you win? How did you take a 2-year-old product and win the #1 rye whiskey in the world? I said, well, thank God it was a blindfolded, taste test. So, to take a 2-year-old and beat a 7, 8, 9, 10-year-old, it just doesn't happen. So, to have people that are my peers and are in the business that are huge companies to come to me and say, Court, I don't know how you did it. So, well, we work hard, we do things the way we want to do them. I'm not worried about I don't care what it costs. I know that's crazy as can be. And you're going to go, oh, he doesn't care. I don't care. I want to put out a product. If it's not ready, we put an X on it. And we put it back in the rick house. So we taste every barrel that goes out this door. We just don't pull 500 barrels off, slosh them in a bucket, mix them up, boom, it's gone. We taste them. We know what they're good. We know that they're not good. And if they're not, we put them back and wait another 3 months.
Well, Corky, it sounds like thinking outside the box has helped you guys, achieve some high results early on. One question came through kind of in that vein of how does creativity contribute to the success of your company?
Well, you have to have a vision. I mean, I think on a larger scale. I think I think Jeffrey's helped me on that. I mean, we did a lot of business in Hong Kong. Our biggest office was in London. So I knew you got to go all over the world. You have to do things that are big. When I got into this, I wasn't just interested, okay, I'm going to have Kentucky, I'm going to have Indiana, I'm going to have Tennessee, I'm going to have I'm going to be all over the United States, and we're going to do it fast. So I think you have to have a vision. You have to spread. My whole theory is you have to spread your risk. You have to be in small states, big states, little states. You've got to be over here, over there, because something's going to happen over there, and you better have it over here. So I think you have to spread your risk. That's very, very important to me, and I look at that all the time.
Pivot maybe back to the, or as we'll stay on this, the business side. Is Corky, you've seen one company through a whole business life cycle, and are still relatively early in reviving the brand here. What do you look at as the long-term strategy for the brand? Do you think you'll pass it down and it'll continue to be a family owned, or potentially look for an opportunity to sell down the road? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I'm the fourth generation. Carson's the fifth. I've got some grandchildren, obviously, that want to be the sixth. I think that it's very difficult to work with distributors. That's one of the hardest things to do in this business. And when I say I want to spread my risk, someday, maybe not in my lifetime, but someday I want Peerless to sell 50% of the product outside the United States and 50% inside the United States. So to answer your question, we're going to have a partner that's going to take us all over the world and spread our risk and be a high-end product. So I'll have to take in a partner. I'll have to take somebody who wants a high-end product that's made in the manner in which they want it made, because we can't be all over the world. We have to have a partner that has as I would say, has a machete in one hand and a chainsaw in the other. So that would be my theory on how I would handle that.
All right. Well, got one more question I'll pose your way, and then we can pivot over to tasting, because I'm sure the crowd's getting anxious there, but wanted to try to get as many through as possible. So Lisa Benson had asked, do you think the craft market is getting too crowded, or is there room for more competition?
I really think in terms of the craft market, it's interesting. COVID has had a significant impact, as you can imagine. Roughly $700 million in craft spirit sales within the U.S. has been lost during COVID. 11% of craft distilleries have lost all distribution in all markets. So you've seen kind of what we have both predicted over the number of years, that there was this reckoning kind of going to happen down the road of too many entries into the marketplace, and then eventually you see kind of a consolidation and some of those fading away. So I think what happened with COVID, it accelerated that reckoning, where there are fewer but probably better competition out there, and ones that can really last and are more sustainable for the long haul because of the certain things they've done in terms of scaling the product efficiently with distribution, making a product that's truly differentiated from the marketplace. So kind of the cream is rising to the top, if you will, throughout this.
Thanks, Cordell. Well, we appreciate you guys giving a little background and also spending a little time answering questions. But yeah, I mentioned we can make the pivot, and I think there's a lot of people ready to try some bourbon. So.
All right, now I guess on to the tasting, the fun part, right? I am in the rick house. I'm right behind us. We do have a rick house right on site that holds about 2,000 barrels. And what I want to do today is I want to set up a nice tasting for us, but I wanted to make sure that I included some of our small batch and a single barrel in there. That way you can really see the depth and complexity of some of these barrels that we are introducing into these batches. So what we have here today, the sample is, we're going to start with that sample number 1. That is going to be our small batch bourbon. Now, when it comes to our batching, Caleb is using 20 to 25 barrels for each batch that we're actually putting into here. So he is hand selecting, and he is very careful on what he chooses to put into these batches. Because we are using so few barrels, he's really going to be able to highlight these unique flavor profiles that we're pulling out of these barrels. Compared to some of your bigger companies out there, they're using 1,000+ barrels to mingle into these batches. So you're not going to really be able to highlight some of those unique flavor profiles. So what we're going to start with today is our small batch bourbon. It is 107.3 proof. Now, as Corky explained, we do everything at barrel strength. So you're going to notice as we go through these, they're all going to be different proofs. We don't have a set proof that we go to. When we roll it out of that barrel, whatever proof it is, we leave it. We don't chill filter. We don't charcoal filter. We run it through basically a simple paper filter. Now, a couple things that you want to keep in mind when we're tasting through, especially some of these higher proofs, it's really important what they call nosing. Think about being able to taste, right? Half of being able to taste is really being able to smell. Think about anytime you have a cold, right? You don't get to taste your food. So you're going to see a lot of people going to take their glass and you're going to just slightly move it around. You want to keep your mouth open, breathe in through your nose, and kind of exhale through your mouth too while you're doing this. And the reason being, going from side to side, your nasal passages, they change every 30 minutes. So you will notice that you're going to be able to smell a little bit different and maybe a little bit stronger from one side of the next. Now, right off the nose, I get orange zest, toasted brown sugar, cedar, and very herbaceous too. Now, when it comes to this, keep in mind, everyone's palate is your own. And when you're taking sips of this, you want to take just small, tiny sips. If you think, you got to think about it, if you throw it back, you're going to overwhelm your taste buds. You're going to get all that alcohol. You're going to get what we call that Kentucky hug. That's that burning sensation you get down your throat. So really the point of this is, one thing to keep in mind is sip and savor. So what you want to do is you just want to take a small sip off that glass to kind of warm up your palate first. And that's when you're really going to start developing your flavor on your palate. So usually around that third sip, your taste buds are going to be nice and warmed up. And that's when you're really going to be able to start picking up some of these nuances that we have in there. Now, I do like to get a little bit of opinion. So if anybody wants to, feel free to let me know what you're tasting, what you're smelling, and kind of your opinion on this too as well. Now, one thing that we do extremely different in our process is we use a strictly sweet mash compared to sour mashing. So you're going to notice that we're going to have a lot better grain forward characteristics in there, and you're not going to have a little bit of that hint of almost like a little bit of sourness that comes in through bourbon and whiskey when you're using a sour mash. Ours is going to come across very sweet, very flavorful. And because we don't chill filter, you're really going to feel those oils coat your palate in your mouth. We call that the Kentucky chew, as you kind of move that around and swish it around in your mouth. I like the plastic cup, by the way.
Bad planning on my side. I had a last minute pivot.
No, that's all right. I've been there. So, thoughts and opinions on the small batch bourbon? Enjoyable? Any comments or anything about the first one we tried here?
Yeah, people have comments. Feel free to join in. We'll appreciate feedback from the group.
Now, that was our small batch bourbon. So that is, as Corky said, our everyday product. You're going to be able to find this in about 50 different states, depending on the rye or bourbon. Hopefully, as Corky said, we want to go beyond that, though. So the next sample we have here, sample number 2. This is still a bourbon, but this is a single barrel. So one of my main objectives and jobs here is I'm our single barrel curator. So I get to have a lot of fun here at work. I get to go through these barrels right behind me when they're done aging and taste through these barrels with our master distiller, Caleb, and Nick Klee, one of our other distillers. And we're looking for unique flavor profiles, aromas, anything that's going to really help that barrel stand out. We don't want to mix that into a batch. We want to take that barrel and then sell it to, private groups, liquor stores, restaurants, anybody that is wanting or interested in our product. And we like to give these barrels a little name. They help describe maybe the flavor profile of that barrel or just how we were feeling about that barrel. So the first one we're going to try here on a single barrel is called the Beekeeper. Now, this one is 114.9 proof. But once again, don't let that scare you off. You will find for a higher proof, we are going to be very sweet, very smooth on the back end. And that goes a lot into our process on how we do things around here using that sweet mash, which at the end, I'll dive in a little bit the difference between a sweet and a sour mash. to kind of give you a better understanding why we are so different than most places. So first thing you want to do too on that single barrel, once again, is just go ahead and give that glass a good nosing first. And right away, the caramel, the toffee, the honey, all just comes across in there for me. You get some savory smoke, a little toasted oak on there. Almost like an orange, but more like a peel, not a zest. I know that sounds weird, but there are 3 of us that go through and taste these barrels. So we got 3 different palates commenting on these too as well, which makes it a lot of fun too. Now, same thing, remember, little sips, you want to get your palate adjusted first. Even though, you know, we did sip on that small batch bourbon, you still want to give your palate time to warm up and really be able to kind of pull out these flavors that we have in there. So go ahead, whenever you're ready, you can give it a little taste too. I did see someone comment a little bit of a floral smell. That's absolutely correct. There's no wrong answer when it comes to this. Some people will try to say, no, that's not right or anything, but you know, here at Peerless, we really truly believe that everyone's palate is very unique to them, and there is absolutely no wrong answer when it comes to smelling and tasting these products.
Hey, John.
Now, yes, sir.
Tony Thompson here. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Are you using a level 3 char?
Yes, so in all of our barrels, we get our barrels from Kelvin Cooperage. They're just about 20 minutes down from us. They're originally from Scotland, but they're located right here. So we do a medium toast with a level 3 char inside of all of our barrels. And the great thing about Kelvin's, they're one of the only cooperages that don't use any gas or infrared when it comes time to char their barrels. They're taking all that leftover oak from their barrels that they're making, and that's how they make those fire pits in order to char these barrels. So it's all natural heat they're putting inside of these barrels too, which just delivers an excellent flavor profile to them.
Yeah, and what else is, for me, it's been signature with Peerless. I love the viscosity of it. It's got that nice oily viscosity that kind of hangs there. And maybe it's at 107 entry proof, but I've just always noticed that signature kind of floral note with a lot of Peerless, and then that nice oily kind of mouthfeel on it too.
No, absolutely, you're 100% correct. So the beautiful thing about one of our processes is we don't chill filter. If you're not familiar with that, basically most of your distilleries are going to do what they call chill filtering. So they're going to basically bring that temperature of that alcohol down, and they're going to strip out those oils out of there. Basically for aesthetic reasons. You know, if you ever seen your bottle of whiskey or bourbon get a little cloudy in there, right? You see that stuff coagulating. That's all the oils from in there. Whereas we don't chill filter because of our process. We don't have to worry about that happening. So we get to hold on to all that delicious flavor that's going to help coat your mouth, coat your palate, and just deliver a nice experience when you're sipping on our product. Now, so that was a bourbon single barrel that we have. Now, I am a rye guy. I love bourbon, but you know, I can't really say that here in Kentucky because a lot of people look at you crazy if you're not like a huge bourbon guy. But rye is my more cup of tea. And to give you, and if you're not familiar with the difference, to make bourbon a bourbon, it's at least made with 51% corn. Now, for a rye whiskey to be a rye whiskey, it's at least 51% rye. That's why rye is going to come off a little bit more spicier than bourbons, because it's going to have a little bit higher rye content in there. But you're going to notice as we go through our rye, one of the names that we've kind of adopted here is a Bourbon Drinkers Rye. Because our bourbon isn't one of those, or I mean, our rye isn't one of those like punch you in the mouth with spice. We don't use a very high rye content. We really like that corn to be able to shine through and kind of sweeten it out a little bit. So the third sample we have here is our small batch rye. It's 110.6 proof, but you're going to notice it's going to be very well balanced too. Anytime you're dealing with our small batches, you got to think is we're taking all these different flavor profiles and we're putting them into a batch together, but we want it to be very well balanced. We don't want it to be too oaky, you know, too sweet, too peppery. So like I said, Caleb works really hard in batching these together. But right away, you get that orange, kind of a sweet floral zest off there, sweet tobacco, and almost like a sweet cream in a way. Now, once again, don't let me tell you or influence you anything on what you're smelling or tasting. They do say women have a better palate than most men, though. So they are a little bit at an advantage. They can smell and taste better than we can. and it's just packed with flavor. Is one thing I just really enjoy about this. Now, I'm a little biased because I work here, but I truly believe we have one of the best ryes out on the market, even with our bourbon too.
Do you all disclose your mash bill for the bourbon and the rye?
So we don't. Corky loves keeping that a secret. Feel free to shoot him as many emails you want asking about that mash bill, but he won't budge on it. It's nothing crazy, I promise. Like, we're not doing anything, illegal or anything like that. He just loves the fact that that's what everyone always wants to know. What's your mash bill? And who knows how long he'll keep that a secret, but yeah, we don't disclose our mash bill.
Hey, John, one more question. A lot of distilleries like to pay homage to their heritage and will release expressions, just kind of paying tribute to different master distillers or other people that were influential for their brand. As Peerless, as they're starting to kind of ramp up production and have some stock there, have they thought about that? I mean, I know you like the Beekeeper. I was a big fan of the Rye Cherry Cola. But are there expressions that you think will come out that will kind of pay homage, maybe even to Corky be the first one?
Absolutely. As we're going forward and moving on, Cordell, Caleb, they're very focused on expanding and, experimenting and just being creative too. So Cordell and Caleb have done a great job of putting together stuff for the future too as well. So yeah, I think there probably will be some things that we do later on down the road. Different series or additions that we add to the portfolio.
And great question on that front, Tony. So you've probably seen our absinthe finished rye whiskey. It was a collaboration with Copper and Kings here in Louisville, and that was released last year. And we actually landed a Forbes article from that. So there'll be some other innovative things coming out similar to that kind of collaboration this year and years to come, as well as older age product that will pay homage to some of the personalities, including Corky.
But Tony, I'm holding some of those barrels in honor of my great-grandfather, Henry Craver. So I'll take a look at it in 8 years, 10 and 12 years. So some of the barrels that I'm holding in the back, and we've got, a couple hundred barrels we're holding just in his honor. But it'll be ready when it's ready. If we don't like it in 8, we'll wait till 10. So we'll put it out that it's all going to be under the Henry Craver label.
So the last sample we have here, number 4, this is going to be a rye single barrel and probably one of the most unique ones we've pulled out of the distillery here back here in our ricks. And to give you an idea, you can kind of see our rick house. You're going to notice we keep everything at one story. We don't do multi-level rick housing. We're more concentrated on the airflow than really the temperature change throughout the rick house. But we do have about 9 to 10 degrees temperature-wise difference from top to bottom. So that also allows us not to have to rotate our barrels. Barrels are very heavy. They're about 540 pounds. So I'm really glad I don't have to come in here and rotate barrels around all day. Because like I said, we don't temperature control this room. Whatever it is outside, it's that cold in here. If it's hot outside, it's just as hot in here too as well. And we did just build a brand new rick house that holds about 5,300, about twice as much as we keep down here. But it's beautiful. We bought about 20-something acres out in Campbellsville, and it's just beautiful. It sits on a nice hilltop. We got plenty of land to build some other rick houses out there. We got a little pond and everything too as well. But this last one we have here, the single barrel rye, it's 111.3 proof, and we call this one Smoked Chocolate and Cherries. So the name pretty much describes this one, but you'll notice same thing right off the nose. A little bit of like flambe tart cherries, brown sugar, toasted oak. Now, all these tasting notes that you all are reading off of, these are from Caleb, our master distiller. He has a very unique way of describing these barrels. I always call it his poetry. Just listening to him come off with some of these tasting notes is just extraordinary and fascinating. But like I said, he grew up out in the country on a dairy farm. So his palate and senses are a little bit more enhanced than mine, if you can imagine, growing up here in the city. But same thing, just make sure you nose your glass a little bit first before you take that first sip. And right away, you can get that smoke, kind of a little bit of like a dry cocoa, cherry reduction, sweet grass, honeysuckle, and just all around, just an extraordinary barrel. So you can imagine when you come across barrels like these are ones that we are not wanting to add to a batch. These can stand alone by themselves and be a great representation of what Kentucky Peerless really is. Now, as I was kind of explaining earlier, one reason we can get so many unique flavor profiles and we have just such a distinct flavor profile to our product is the fact that we are using a sweet mash compared to sour mashing. Now, sour mashing is obviously the oldest way of doing things. And what that is actually doing is when you have a sour mash, first off mash, it's a mixture of grains, water, and malt. And what you're gonna do with your sour mash is you're gonna take some of your leftover stillage. You also hear people call it, you know, spent grain, spent beer. But basically it's just leftover water and grains after your distillation. And what you wanna do in a sour mash is you wanna introduce that into your next mash that you're doing, your next cook. And the reason you're introducing that sour mash into it is that sour mash, that leftover stillage, it's gonna have basically some dead yeast in there, which is great for your live yeast. It's a great food source for that live yeast to feed on. And the acidic level in that sour mash is gonna help keep away any unwanted bacteria or yeast that would actually taint your bourbon. So it helps them keep a very consistent flavor profile, assuring that you're going to have the exact the same consistency in each bottle. Now, once again, that was the old way of doing things. They really didn't have an understanding back in the day of how yeast actually works. So when it came to building this new distillery, you know, we could have did things the old way that Henry Craver did it, but they really wanted to stand out, as Corky said, and be different. So we chose to go with the sweet mash. So we're not using any of that leftover spent water and grains off the still after the distillation. We're starting fresh each time, fresh water, fresh grains, first generation yeast every time. So we are gonna spend, you gotta think, a little bit more in production because of this, but it truly makes a better quality product. As we're adding all those fresh ingredients and it sits up there and ferments, we're drawing out the full flavor every time. So that allows our distiller to come off the still at a much lower proof, but we're still obtaining and holding on to all that good grain quality and flavor and those oils that just makes for a better quality product in the long run. And we only make 10 to 12 barrels a day here. So as kind of we want to touch on, we're more worried about quality over quantity. We're not worried about putting out the most. We just want to put out the best. Now, what comes along with doing a sweet mash, and the reason most bigger places stay away, if you can ever come down here and take a look at our distillery, everything we did was basically just the right size to be able to control the environment in order for a sweet mash to really be able to thrive. So what I mean by that is we use stainless steel piping for everything. So in between each cook and distillation, we have to deep clean all our equipment. So basically what we're gonna do is we have everything connected where we can feed steam going all through our lines, up into our fermenters, our cook, and we're gonna steam clean everything. So we'll heat it up to about 210 degrees, hold it for about 20 minutes, because we have to kill any of that leftover yeast and bacteria that could possibly be left in there. Because if we don't, it will actually taint that next batch that we are doing. And at that point, you just have to throw everything out. So it is a lot more labor intensive as well. But like I said, and I keep on repeating this, we're just worried about the best quality product. You know, so what that we have to do a little bit more cleaning. And as Corky said, so what that we're going to spend a little bit more money in production. It truly shows in the finished product why we do it that way. Any questions though about tasting? Any more questions about our production, just rick housing, how we do things around here?
John or Cordell, I know a question has come up multiple times about buying what we're tasting today. Are you all have available bottles of what we've tasted today? And if so, how should we, get a hold of y'all?
We do. Go ahead, Cordell, go ahead.
Absolutely. So those are available online on KentuckyPeerless.com. You can purchase online and then pick up curbside, or if you'd like to come and actually shop the gift shop itself, they're available here in person, and you can schedule your tasting and tour online ahead of time as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Cordell.
Yeah, well, I just can't thank you all enough for being here and taking the time. Hopefully y'all enjoyed everything. And if you enjoyed those single barrels on our small batch, we have plenty more here down at the distillery. So please come down here and see us. You can book tours and tasting online. We do have several time slots. We're open Monday through Saturday for that. And we love to see you all. And, you know, when you come down here, you're going to see, you may get a tour from somebody up front and then see them the next day back here rolling barrels or, you know, filling barrels. There's only about 25, 26 of us here. And they have done just a great job of building not just a team, but really a small family here.